Hello, my name is Christopher Thomas. I'm the Data Compliance Analyst with the Office for the Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition. This is a training on how to complete monthly contract reporting for fiscal year 23-24. This applies to all joint funded organizations operating inside PA-510 in Lancaster County. Just to give an overview of what we're going to look at, take a quick look here at Appendix C, just so we're all on the same page and you know where this information comes from in your contracts. We will then move on to what are the monthly reports that are going to be expected of providers from July 23 until June 24. We will touch briefly on how to submit reports every month and when. And then the last section will be on how to actually run the reports that you will need in order to do this reporting. This video will be time-stamped, so each of those will be its own heading, so you can jump ahead. Providers that are familiar with monthly reporting already, maybe you can skip section 4. But my plan here is for this to cover everything you would need to know in order to submit your first reports by August 10, 2023 for July 2023. So moving on to the first point here, joint funding contracts in Appendix C. This document you see in front of you here, this is a version that is not customized. You will have received a version with your organization's name on it, and sections will have been cut down just to represent the programs that you are operating through joint funding. But this document here is going to lay out what are these different kinds of reporting, program indicators, data quality, and what are their subsections? What do each of the headings on that report mean exactly? That would be the section A here is what is that referring to? And then in parentheses here for each of these, it also shows which question on which report would give you the number to fill in when you do your reporting. So each of these is listed here. This also shows you for running program specific reports, what report do you need to run for which program type? And then we also go into specific items on those program specific reports. So again, depending upon which programs you're operating, you won't see all of these headings. You'll just see the ones on your Appendix C that refer to the programs you operate. But each of them will have a name, a report and question, and a description for every single thing that we expect you to be reporting. So there's no mystery in terms of what the words in that spreadsheet mean. It also goes into qualitative report. So what are we looking for when we say qualitative reporting? We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then also, how does data quality reporting work? This will be a little bit different this year. The direction of data quality reporting is going to be different this year. So I will be sending you your data quality report rather than you sending it to me. And that will give you the opportunity between the time that you receive that report and when we meet to make changes, edits, and improve your data quality. This also talks briefly about the monthly cadence. So what happens when each month? There's some flexibility here, but section 3 of Appendix C will tell you what to expect from each month's reporting. Okay. Section 2, talking about what are those monthly reports, what do they look like? And these should have already come to you, the templates you'll need for these, as part of your contract package. So you receive the text of your contract, all of its appendices. You should have also received the spreadsheets I'll be showing you. But if you don't have them, you can very easily get them from me just by emailing me at cthomas@lchra.com. So first, we're going to look at program indicators. This will look familiar to those of you who have done reporting before. Parts of it look different, however. So there's a new tab here called Introduction. I realize the text is a little bit fine. Don't worry about reading it at the moment. But this text describes how to do reporting, when, who, how do I submit them, what do I do to troubleshoot, and then specific kind of considerations for different program types. So in theory, you could read this introduction tab and find answers to questions about how do I do this reporting. But I'm recording this video so that you won't have to read every word of this. But just know that this introduction tab is here as a reference. If you have questions you think that might be able to answer by checking this first tab. So again, there's 3 parts to monthly reporting. We're looking at the first one, which is program indicators. Think of this in terms of activities, outputs, and in some cases, outcomes. This first tab, second tab here, I'm sorry, program indicators, again, is showing the complete version of this document. You, unless you're operating every single program type, won't need to fill in every single cell every single month. You'll just fill in the ones for programs you operate. You can always refer to Appendix C if you're wondering about which programs are your organization is running and we're expecting reports from. I'm just going to talk briefly because we're not going to talk yet about how to run reports. We're just going to look at this document and briefly familiarize ourselves with it. The expectation is that we receive this report every month and a new version each month, right? So you'll just be building upon this spreadsheet each month when you do your reporting. Last month's numbers will still be there. You'll just move into the next column and add the new ones for the next month that you're reporting on. Tried to do some color differences here to make different sections stand out, but you'll notice that the top section here says all programs. So this would be any program you're running. If you're running one program, you'd run these reports for that program. If you're running 5 programs, you would run this report for all 5 programs in Empower Lancaster and combine the responses you get into these first few rows. Because these are measurements that are going to be common to basically every project type, right? How many people were exited to housing, back to the streets, and how many people were we missing exit data for? The other thing I'll point out here is the first row is child-only households. I don't want this to be confusing. The phrasing might seem confusing, but really this should always be 0. When we have any child-only households, it means that there's something amiss in EL, and household has been kind of assigned incorrectly. So we're missing a head of house for a house with kids in it. We can talk more about that in a minute. Once you get farther down here, you'll see that there are program specific measures as well. So you will only run a report, the report specified here actually, for that program for your organization to get the numbers to fill in here. And again, these are going to be more specific to that program type. They're not going to be applicable for all programs. That's why they're separated out this way. And then the last tab here, it says qualitative report. This is not going to look too much different from last year. Just a few sentences, a short answer, something that went well, something that's not going well. We have made good use of these in the past in grant applications and in reporting to our funders like HUD. So these, it's a minor thing, but these do come in handy for us when we are reporting back to our funders. So this is the first version. Again, we have program indicators, an introduction, the actual numbers, that you'll fill in each month, and then a short answer section. So that is number 1 here. 2, I'm just going to briefly touch on invoices. This is how you bill us for services. This is a little bit different because you're not talking about, let's say, the quality of the work being done or your success. You're really just talking about the number of hours of case management completed, the number of bed nights of shelter completed. But the reason I have it as part of this section is that you'll be using a similar report in EL to get this information. So even though I don't have a template for your invoices, that'll just come straight out of EL. I want to mention it here just because that's something that's going to also happen on this same schedule every month. And like I said, on 3 here, we'll get down to how do you submit those invoices, and then 4, how do you actually run them. So we'll touch on those things farther into this session. Okay, so the last report here, data quality reports, again, just showing this so everyone's seen it. Again, this first tab is an introduction. Each of these sections describe what the document is, how to use it, what our expectations are for what to do with the report, and then what our monthly meetings will be like. So each of these are written out as text. In short, what's going to happen each month on or around the 5th is you will receive a copy of this document for each joint funders program you're operating. So rather than you, as has happened in the past, running these data quality reports, which I realize is time consuming, I will be doing it for you. Now, the template looks the same. You'll be getting a percentage in each of these cells that is your percent of data error, your error rate. And furthermore, you'll also get in each of these individual tabs, there will be, it will be de-identified, but you will have specific issues that need to be resolved. So is this person missing a full name? Do they have a social security number that EL has identified as being impossible, like 111, 111111? So you'll be getting actual client level feedback on personal identifying information, universal data elements, which is project start date, veteran status, location, disability, and then also exit destination and income assessments. So rather than just looking at a number on this first tab and saying you had a 10% error rate this month and 20% error rate last month, you did 10% better. We're going to be seeking actual edits and revisions based on what we see in these tabs. And when we meet later on in that month, we'll be talking about what changes and what improvements you made, and are we working together basically to get our data better, and also what barriers are you finding? You know, where are the pain points in terms of getting this information, and what can we do to help support with that? Because I'll pause here before we move on to the next section of this video, which will be how to submit these reports and invoices through Neighborly. All right, section 3, submitting through Neighborly. This part is described in a separate video recorded by Beth from this office. You will receive a YouTube link where Beth describes how to use this system. It's pretty straightforward. Each month you will create what's called a draw request in the system, where you will be able to upload your invoices as PDFs or Excel documents along with your program indicator report that we looked at earlier. It'll also give you an opportunity to enter an amount of money for reimbursement or for invoicing. But rather than repeating something Beth already did, I'm going to share this YouTube link with you. That way You can watch this when the time comes next month in August to submit your first neighborly request. All right, and for the last section, how to run reports in Empower Lancaster, we're going to move over to EL, and I will show you how those reports run. So referring back to Appendix C, there are 3 reports in Empower Lancaster that we use to do monthly reporting. Depending upon which programs you operate, you may only need to use one of those 3. You may potentially need to use all 3 of them. I will describe how they all work and give you a good place to start in terms of doing that reporting. So the first thing to remember, besides logging in, of course, is that to do monthly reporting, you will need to make sure that you have selected the role supervisor/director. So at least one person at your organization should already have that role set up. That's not true if that person has been separated or you were never given that role in the first place. Send me an email, again, cthomas@lchra.com. We can make sure that someone on your team has this level of access. EL will not look that different. In terms of client details, it'll be about the same. This navigation bar on the left, a little bit different when you're in here as a supervisor. But the really important thing is this tab up here, administration. In the administration section, there's now only one option for navigating on the left here. It's reporting. And reporting pops out with 2 different options, operational reports and compliance reports. I refer to there being 3 different kinds of reports. 2 of those are APRs, annual performance reports, and the other is a service report. Most programs will use one of the APRs, so we'll do that one first. To get there, click on compliance reports. Now, most of the options in here you don't need to worry about. The only ones I would worry about here are APR 2023 and coordinated entry APR 2023. So we'll do the APR 2023 first because it's the most common report you'll need to run. Parenthetically, it's also a report that HUD commonly uses. So if you are operating your own HUD-funded programs, this is a report that you'll need to know how to use. When you click in here, you'll have the options to set start and end date and a project. Your organization should be automatically filled in. Now, there aren't really any projects belonging to the coalition itself. So the data that we get on this report is going to be not great, but the format will all be the same. So we're just going to use our imaginations. I'm going to report on the first month of the contract from last year. So we're going to look at July 2022. And let's just say, hypothetically, that I wanted to report on my Pathways Rapid Rehousing project. So now I've set my start date, my end date, and I've selected my project. Going back to something I said a few minutes ago, there's going to be some questions on that program indicators report that apply to all programs. So let's use our imaginations again and say I'm operating a Pathways program, but I'm also operating a chart program. So I'm going to add chart, coordinated assessment, and Pathways when I want to do my all programs reporting. All this remains then is to just click this report button down here. A new window will pop out. And from here, we can use these 2 buttons up here in the top to navigate through pages to find the questions referred to in the program indicators report. One I know for certain is up there for all programs, is several pages over. I think it's Q22 or Q23. And that table has to do with exit destinations. Again, like I said, we're not really going to find any data in here because the coalition itself is not operating these projects. So we're all going to see zeros. But this is where you would go to find total persons exited to positive housing destinations. There'd be a number here. Data not collected, there'd be a number here. And exited to the street, there'd be a number here. Place not meant for human habitation. So this is just one example of where you could go, or where you would go rather, to find those numbers each month for all programs, assuming you operate more than one joint funder program. So it's a matter of running the APR and then using these arrows to navigate to the table that you need. Take us back to the beginning, because another example would be children-only households. Do we have anyone who's in here as with only children? And here I see that, in fact, yes, there are people in here as being from child-only households, which is likely a mistake. We can troubleshoot that if it happens, but this is just another example of looking for, in parentheses, the queue number, which table that response is going to be found in, and then navigating over to find it so you can get the numbers that you need. I'm going to back us up here and assume again, let's say we're just doing pathways. It's the same process. We're just narrowing it down. You can select a single project, or you can select multiples. So these are all tick boxes. You can add as many of them as you want. But if we were to report, let's just say for pathways, same thing happens. We run the APR, we wait for it to load, and then we just navigate through to find the questions that we need. Another example of this would be income change. So for pathways, we're going to be looking at income change between start and exit, I believe is one of the measures. So we'd look for Q19A2, it's the sub table that this is, and we're looking for our performance measure, percentage of people who accomplish this measure, increase their income. So you'd look down here, adult spending income, and this percentage would be the number that you would use. I realize that a lot of these tables are quite big, and you might have questions about exactly which of these cells should I use. If ever it's not obvious, you have questions, obviously, I can be reached anytime via email. I'm always happy to help do some fine tuning or troubleshooting. So that's the first of the three, and that's probably the most complicated one, right? The other one we're going to go over quickly. It's just for chart. Is coordinated entry APR, CEAPR, very much similar to the APR, but fields are going to be a little bit different, and that's going to be based on coordinated entry having different requirements. So again, we're going to go in here. This will give you the option to select your organization. Obviously, if we're using the coordinated entry APR, we're just looking for chart. And this one also requires that we select our COC code. So always look for PA-510 is the one that you want. And then again, click report, a new window pops out, and this will let us, again, just navigate through using the arrows to find the tables that we need. You'll notice, of course, that some things are a little bit different about chart. We're going to be expanding this later on this year. Of course, if you don't run a chart program, don't worry about this, but we'll be looking more at prioritization and coordinated access events. So looking at whether or not a person was successfully referred to a housing project or successfully diverted rather, using this report. But to start off with, this is really the number you're going to want to look for. Participation in coordinated entry, total households assessed. How many households had a chart assessment completed? We won't dwell too long on that one. And then the last thing I want to look at is going to be specific to, some projects are more based around activities as opposed to having, gaining housing, let's say, being a stated intended outcome. And those are ones that are going to be used, we're going to use services to report on those. And those service reports are going to be in the other option here, which is operational reports. And from here, you'll select service summary by program. Similar to the APR, your organization that you're associated with will already be pre-filled here, so you won't need to do anything with that. You'll just need to set your date range and then pick the program that you want to report on. So let's say we're looking at the outreach project being operated. You can narrow it down to certain types of service here, but what we're always going to do is just select all services. And then we'll report, and again, a new window will pop out. And it's a bad example because we don't have any services under our organization. So this is a bad sign, obviously, if you get a blank. I'm going to rewind really quickly and do this in a way that will actually let us get some real data in here. This is multi-organization, will let you select what organization you want to report on. So we're just going to do all organizations that are operating the outreach project. Again, we're going to pick all services. Everything else we're going to leave at all. And we're going to click report. And this window that pops out will be what yours will actually look like. In here, each row is a different service. And then these different columns are the number of times that service was entered. If you click this, you'll get a sub-report that will pop out with information about who received that service. And then you get more detail over here. So how many clients received the service, how many families, of those families, what was their breakdown? So adults, children, and seniors. And you'll also be able to look, some of these are going to be important to look at depending upon your project type, right? So day shelter has a day shelter service. So you'd be looking at that row, you'd be looking for the day shelter service here and seeing how many entries did we have, or how many units rather, I'm sorry, how many times was that entered for a client? And then also this column here, let you know how many clients received that service. And while we're on the topic, this is also how invoicing is done. So you can download this as an Excel file or a PDF. It'll look exactly the same when you download it. And this is what would show the number of billable units for programs that operate based on time, right? So how many units of case management, how many quarter-hour units of case management were entered in that month by this project? So I'm doing my outreach billing. You would look for the case management line. You'd look for your total number of units, and that would be the number of quarter hours of service entered. Okay, this is a year old, so some of the service definitions have changed. Don't worry about that too much, but this again is what you use on a monthly basis to invoice. It's based on the services that were entered for those projects. So again, quick summary. When we are talking about reporting, there are 3 different reports that are going to be used for different projects. They're all located in the supervisor/director role, the administration tab here at the top, and then either the compliance reports for the APR or coordinated entry APR, or operational reports for the service summary by program. Last thing, questions that come up, get a little rusty, you can always find me at cthomas@lchra.com. Here's my desk telephone. Any questions, reach me anytime or bring them to our monthly Empower Lancaster meetings, which will start this month in July of 2023. Thank you.